Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Business Builders Podcast. This episode, we got the sales master, Mr. Steve Trang. Steve, thanks for coming on the podcast and welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm excited. Got a chance to already meet both of you guys in person at a couple of different events. So, yes, I'm excited for this.
Amazing. So, for the people that don't know who Steve Trang is, can you give a little background as to who Steve is?
So, Steve is a recovering serial entrepreneur. So, I've done just about anything and everything realtor, brokerage owner, title company, joint venture or mortgage, wholesaling, flipping, podcasting, sales trainer, right? And today, own a bank and some apartments. But today is like focus. And it's been a hard journey, but just turned 45 a few days ago and realizing like, hey, you're not superhuman and you don't have all the time in the world. So focus. That's who Steve Trang is today.
Well, I did not know you were in so many different ventures before. I only know the sales master, you own wholesale company, brokerages. I think we talked about it. You were trying to create a new fund, like as a fund manager before.
Mm-hmm.
But I did not know about the title company part, mortgage part. That's so cool. Every vehicle in real estate.
Everything but property management. That's the only thing I won't touch.
That's true. Cool. So like nowadays your focus is sales training program?
Sales training. Yeah. It's either sales training or it's podcasting, and that's it. If it's not sales related or podcasting related, we're not involved anymore, which is hard. And we still have some properties we're still unloading, right? Properties that we bought. One that we bought last month that were, or maybe a month ago, 2 months ago, that we're falling in and out of escrow to sell. But beyond that, I mean, we're trying our best to be laser focused, and man, it's hard as a serial entrepreneur.
Interesting. So I guess, the me and John partner, me is like, I'm the kind of person always looking around. Oh, what's there? What's that? That's so cool. We can do this, we can do that. And John is a person, let's be focused, really focused. So I guess for you is how do you decide if it's an opportunity or if it's just a shiny object syndrome and you need to get focused on what you are doing?
Yeah, well, I think the key is you need both, right? You need someone that's up and got their eyes open, surveying the landscape, got their eyes open, aware, right? Because you always have to survey the landscape, but you need the other person or the other part of you to be really dialed in and getting the job done, doing, making the main thing. So it's pretty hard. So today, the filter is actually pretty simple now. I'm trying to build a company I can sell for $100 million, or at least have the option to. And so if this is not in alignment with an opportunity for me to sell my company, we're not doing it. So that's the way we're able to do it. We created Vivid Vision. There's a book called Vivid Vision by Cameron Herold. A good friend of mine asked me to read it. And from there, we wrote out the 3-year plan. And the 3-year plan, once I finished it, because I finished it in December of 23, once I finished it, I noticed real estate was nowhere on that vision plan.
Interesting.
Yeah. And it got really awkward in the company because we have a lot of real estate related people in the company still.
I was going to say, you're like the real estate sales guy.
Yeah, I have been, right? And for a long time. But the reality is I'm the sales guy, not the real estate guy, right? Like I've done real estate. I've done a lot of real estate, but I was never passionate about it.
Really?
I did it. Yeah, I was never passionate about real estate. I was passionate about helping people, right? I'm passionate about helping homeowners that need help. I'm passionate about helping entrepreneurs. I'm passionate about helping salespeople get better at sales. But I can tell you, I was never passionate about showing homes. I was never passionate about like, look at this light fixture, look at this kitchen. I was never excited about that. And I was never excited in the realtor world, having 30 different sellers as my clients and like, here, hey, this is our Tuesday updates. Here's what's going on. Here's how many showings we got, right? On the flipping, I didn't like dealing with contractors, right? So like on the wholesaling side, I loved the game in the living room, helping a homeowner and buying a house. I loved that part, but I didn't like anything after that. So like, I wasn't passionate about the houses. I was passionate about the people, helping the people.
The people and the thrill of the sale.
Exactly.
Can you share with us a little bit more the main takeaways from the book, Vivid Vision, and how did you come to the realization that real estate is not on your vision board?
Yeah, so the Vivid Vision, the point is if you're building a company with a 3-year plan, which 3 years seems to be about the sweet spot. They used to say a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, but man, things move so freaking fast today. You can't have a 5-year plan. It's irrelevant. Like if you asked me 3 years ago, there's no way I would have told you I was going to stop doing real estate. If you asked me 5 years ago, there's no way I would have told you I'm going to be a sales trainer. Right. And so like the 3-year plan seems to be about the sweet spot. And then the point here is you want to cast a vision that your team can follow, and anyone that doesn't work for you will know what your company's about to decide whether they want to work for you. And also, you're going to repel people. There are going to be people that can see like, hey, you know what? I don't agree with this vision. And again, got really awkward when I finished the vision and shared it with the company, right? Because I went into the company Google chat. It's like, here's the vision for 2026, right? This is 2023. Here's the vision for 2026. It got really awkward for everyone that was in the real estate sections of our company.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I also want to ask you, mentioned you want to sell the company for 100 million. Let's say the good thing is your sales training program is recurring revenue. It's very predictable,
Correct.
reliable, low risk, which allows you a higher exit multiple. So let's say for 100 million, you have like 5, 6 exit multiple, which means you need to have discretionary income annually at 20 million per year. Is that kind of like your model as well, aligning with your model?
Yeah, I mean, I looked at it. If I can get to $1 million a month net, right, that's 12 million a year.
Uh-huh.
I think I should be able to sell that for 100 mil. Should, right? Not will, but I mean, in theory, I should be able to, right? And who knows what the true multiplier is, because the service-based industry is a little bit different than like a software and a SaaS and so on. But that's what I have for now. I could definitely get a few more consultants along the way. I do have a good friend, Robert Wensley. I joke as he's my white collar friend, right? I was like, look, this is your world. You tell me what I'm supposed to do here, right? But yeah, I mean, the vision is that if we have a business that's recurring, doing $1 million a month net through all these different industries, then why couldn't we at least have the option to sell the company? And we're doing close to 6 figures a month recurring, and that's just inside real estate. So if we can get to solar and roofing and who knows HVAC, what could that look like? We get into software as a service, high ticket closing. There's no reason why we shouldn't be able to do that. So the question isn't whether we can do it. The question is how can we accomplish that?
And the timeline, how long?
I mean, and sales is something that you're always going to need in any sort of business. So like
100%.
Just having already that kind of revenue in just a real estate space, as soon as you start breaking out into these other industries, I don't see how you can't hit that either.
Exactly. And that's the vision.
So in terms of sales training, initially you started from sales in real estate and you want to venture into like solar, insurance, or whatever. Of course, the lingo of each industry will be different, but what are some fundamental principles you think can be carried forward to different industries as well?
Well, I think the big thing, if you look at our core philosophy, is that the other person just wants to be seen and validated. And Chris Voss talks a lot about it and Never Split the Difference, right? But Mary Kay had one of the best MLMs of all time. And her message to our team was, hey, imagine other person's walking around with a sign that says, I need love. So really our core philosophy is to just really validate the other person, make sure they feel seen, feel heard, feel appreciated. And so if we can't have a conversation where the other person understands, we can convey to them that we understand everything they're going through and what the desired outcome is, and we just help them to achieve that outcome, they're simply buying a solution that they've designed for them. I'm not selling them a solution, right? I'm figuring out what the solution they want is, and I'm just facilitating in that process. And if you look at sales in that lens, doesn't matter what product you're selling, right? And look, I mean, I would say, the question is, how does this compare to like selling solar HVAC? We use this in leadership. If you look at every single thing we do in our lives every single day, we're persuading someone of something, right? We're persuading our colleagues, our coworkers of something, our employees, our leaders, our spouses, our kids, talking the police officer into a warning versus a ticket, right? Like we're persuading all the time. So the industry is irrelevant in my belief. Now, look, maybe I'm naive. Maybe after a year into it, I was like, boy, Steve, you overstepped this one again. That was another boneheaded mistake, and it's a possibility. But I look at sales as sales. It doesn't really matter what you're selling, so long as you make the other person feel appreciated and understood, and that if you can convey that feeling, they're on board whatever you prescribe them, because they will believe that you have their best interest at heart. And the key here is you actually have to have their best interest at heart.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Do
Sure.
you think anybody could be good at sales?
I think anybody could be sales to a certain degree. So there's a guy, Austin McCurdy. He is the number one salesperson for Predictive Index, right? You would
Oh.
not look at
Oh
him.
yeah,
You would
I know
not
who he
look at
is.
him and say this guy is a sales guy, right? But he's got conviction. He believes in the product, and he knows everything there is to know about the product, so he can sell that. But you put him in the car lot, he's toast,
Hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you got someone like Pace Morby, perhaps, right? You could put him in any single environment and he'll crush it in sales, right?
That's
He's a
true.
natural born salesperson. So there's how much natural talent you have, and here's how much you might have lesser potential, but if you desire it, you can do it. So I think anyone could be a good salesperson, so long as they believe in the product and are committed to mastery.
Yeah.
So would you say when you're looking to like hire salespeople on your team, you're looking more for the natural born salesperson, or you're just looking for somebody with a strong desire and has some sort of empathy or EQ?
I'm looking first and foremost for culture fit. Do they have the? Will they be a good part of the company? That's first and
Hmm.
foremost. Because if nothing else matters, right? Like if we
Mhm.
put, for example, a Jordan Belfort in here, like I don't know, right? If we want him at our company, he's gonna
Right,
set records, but I don't know if I want to have him in my company, right?
right.
So I think it's got to be a culture fit first and foremost, and then after that, now we're looking at the intangibles, and the intangibles I'm looking for are empathy and assertiveness, right? So a lot of sales guys that we think of, people we picture in sales is the person that won't take no for an answer, right?
Mhm.
We don't want that guy at our company.
Hmm.
We don't want the guy that won't take no for an answer. We want the guy who is firm, assertive, confident, empathetic, where they'll push for a yes or a no. And when I say push for yes or no, it's like, look, maybe we work together, maybe we don't. Either way is okay. Now, obviously, right, we want contracts, we want yeses. That's what we want. But the guy that says I won't take no for an answer can come across as bullish, right? You think of, we talk about the car sales guys, but you look at, like, for example, Donald Trump, right? Love him or hate him, I don't know if you can have him be in your sales department. The guy's not going to be super coachable, right? The guy is going to
Hmm.
do what he thinks is best, which is fine if you're a culture alignment. But if he's not a culture alignment, man, you're going to have some issues in your organization.
Yeah, yeah, I agree. I mean, regardless of the position, whether they're salespeople or not, if the most important thing is do they fit the culture? Because
Hmm.
even if they don't, then that's also going to just kind of like poison the rest of your employees or the rest of the team, and companies could crumble just from having bad culture fits.
Oh, we see it all the time, right? And then the worst part, if you have a bad culture fit who is an excellent performer, now you're hostage.
Hmm.
Mhm.
Now what do you do, right? And then you have like your B plus, A minus players perhaps leaving, and then it's just like a vicious cycle, and now you're really stuck.
Yeah, because I want to, so you mentioned the sales part. I want to, let's say, John, if you can go ahead and ask more questions about sales in terms of hiring,
Hmm.
like the onboarding, training, management, KPI, and then we jump outside of the sales, talking about Steve, you build up this sales training program as a business. How do you build it and scale it? So we have like two different
Yep.
levels. So I'll
Yep.
have you, John, go ahead and ask all the questions about sales.
Okay. Okay. So now you just mentioned like A players, B minus. So when you're looking to hire
Hmm.
salespeople, right? How do you find your salespeople, and then how do you determine if they should be on your team or not?
So we're pretty blessed at the moment that we have a social media presence. So we do find people from our following, people that reach out to us. So for those of you guys that aren't creating content, like please create content. Like it helps a lot. And also it lets candidates know who you are, right? So I think that's the
Hmm.
first thing. But if you're not doing that, then you got advertising on Indeed, LinkedIn, Wise Hire, and so on. As far as to figure out who to hire, we touched on culture fit a moment ago, and part of that is the interview process. So in our interview process, first and foremost, we're gonna have you take the predictive index, which is a personality profile. We kind of touched on that a moment ago. We're not going to bring you in if it doesn't look like you're going to be a good fit on a predictive index. That's the first thing. Second thing, we have a long list of questions. The questions are very heavily stolen from a book, Who, by Jeff Smart. Right, we use a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those questions, but there's two questions that we use that aren't in that book that really help us figure out as far as culture fits. And is that who do you admire? Who are three people you admire, and what do you admire about them? Right,
Mm-hmm.
and that tells us what are their value system. Right, he was like, I admire my mom for working hard, being a single mother, and putting me, making sure we went to school. All right, now we got hard worker, someone that cares about their family. Right, but if it's like, I admire, some war general, right, and not to say there's anything wrong with that, but like, uh, some like I admire Genghis Khan, like we're probably not gonna be a good fit.
Yeah.
Um, so you look at that, like who do they admire? Is this a good fit, right?
Hmm.
So that's the first one. The second question is, tell me about your best friend. And then when they start describing the best friends, like, okay, these are all traits that you now are aware that they admire, and we just know that people hang out with people like them. So they're describing themselves, but they don't know they're describing themselves. So those are the two questions we like to ask to figure out whether they're a good culture fit.
I like
Yeah.
that. That's very, very interesting. I'm sure when you get it, when they ask those questions, they're probably a little taken back at first, right? Especially when you
Yeah.
ask a friend question.
Yeah. And then sometimes they'll say, oh, but that's not me. It's like, okay, well, that's good to know. Right. But
Yeah.
whenever I say like how much it sound like you, is like, for the most part, you can kind of tell when you're
Right.
interacting with them whether it's them or not.
Now, do you have them role play on the interview?
We have. It's definitely something that we highly suggest, but I can't say we've been as consistent as good with that.
Hmm.
Ian, actually, I take that back. Ian's been involved in a lot of those, and Ian does role play with our sales guys to make sure that they have some chops, right? But the other thing we're looking for is track record, which I didn't bring up a moment ago. We're looking for someone with a track record. We've hired a lot of people that we've trained, and that's great when you're the hustle season of your career. But we're at a point now where we're not in the hustle season. We're looking for people that are already going and can help us go further. So, uh, but there is some role play. Ian on our team does handle the role playing.
But
So
their
now,
background doesn't have to be from like a particular industry. It can be from a different industry,
Hmm.
but having sales
Yeah, as long
experience.
as you're a performer, right? Because the big thing is if you don't know what it takes to succeed,
Right.
it's a problem. So, like, we used to hire a lot of young guys, and the young guys, look, I was one of them at one point, right? And so you want to give guys a chance, but when you get more seasoned in your business, it's not as, I mean, it sounds terrible, but it doesn't make as much business sense to take a chance on a young guy when you can take a proven guy, right?
right.
And so, and the problem with the young guys, because it's just it's just a lower chance of success. And the things that I've done, right? Because I've hired hundreds of salespeople. The problem you run sometimes with the guys that are 25, 28 and younger is these are guys that are still, partying. They're still in the
Mhm.
club scene, right? They're going through more drama in their lives,
Hmm.
which again, I was that person too. But with a seasoned business, you don't want to hire the guys that you need to hold their hand, say, hey, John, like have fun this weekend. Please make sure you drink enough water before you go to bed. Like, I don't want to have that conversation anymore.
Yeah.
I want to hire people that know how to respond when their kid's sick, right? Like they already have a protocol. Are they having their family help out? Is their wife taking care of it? But they already have some sort of routine to deal with sick kids. That's who we want to hire,
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, you don't want to have to worry about losing out on Monday because they're still hungover from Saturday.
which I've done a lot. I've hired a lot of those guys.
Yeah, yeah, and you're like, maybe they'll change, but at this point now in the business, is no point in hoping because now you could just get a seasoned guy.
Exactly.
So, when you're looking at predict, are you familiar with culture index?
I'm familiar. As the only familiar I have with it is that it's pretty much like predictive index. It's not exactly the
Mhm.
same, but mostly
Right.
the same.
Yeah, because we
So
use that for all of
for
our hiring.
Hmm.
That's our first
mhm.
filtration and the interview.
Yeah, like we had 60 or so applicants on one of our acquisitions roles, and I think
Hmm.
we only interviewed like five of them because none of
Yep.
them fit the perfect profile. And
Right.
from what we've found for the profile, it's they have to be personable, right? They have to have social ability. They can't be
Hmm.
too far to the left on the social ability. They have to have some sort of assertiveness, basically either
Hmm.
on the line or like over or slightly to the left. They'll be more of a killer if they're to the right of the line, and
Hmm.
then they need some sort of patience as well. If they're too far, of like too. what's that word I'm looking for?
Low yield, which is like
No, no,
durability.
no, no. To
Driving.
no,
But
it's about
they can
pace.
focus. They
If
are
they
saying
if they're
about
too if they're too impatient,
Hmm.
they're not going to take the time to build the rapport that they need. And then you also
Hmm.
want them to not be too much detail oriented, just
For sure.
because they won't be creative on the phone call, right? That's
Hmm.
what we found. Would you
Yeah.
agree that's what you look for in the predictive
Yeah.
as well?
Yeah. So for us, we're looking for high independence, like moderately high, not super high, but moderately high independent, moderately sociable, moderately impatient, and then not analytical. So
not
Right.
analytical.
just don't be analytical. Like we don't care if you're a little detail oriented. We don't care if you're super not detail oriented. We just don't want you to be too detail oriented. Because if you're too detail oriented, now when it comes to creative problem solving, thinking outside the
Hmm.
box,
It's not there.
it's just not going to work.
So now that's a big thing, right? Because when they're in the CRM, they're usually not super. The best, from what we've seen, the best salespeople aren't super detail oriented, right? But they're
Correct.
usually a nightmare in the CRM. So
Yep.
when you hire them, do you have a? Is it that you rely on the system that you have in place, or do they have like somebody that is managing the CRM for them and they're just getting on the phones?
Well, the great thing about AI today is that AI takes care of that problem now. So we have it. So we use Go High Level in our organization, right? And so
Same.
Mhm.
our VA is awesome, Ira, right? Her nickname is Skynet because she sees everything, right? So what we have is basically when the call is done, the sales rep just has to go click on transcripts, copy it, go into a custom field that we've created, hit paste, right? And then the chat GPT or whatever automatically creates an AI summary and all the notes are inside the CRM. So uh, we don't require salespeople to be any even moderately decent at notes anymore. Like AI has solved that problem. Like thank God, because that's the worst part about salespeople.
What about follow-ups, which is important?
Follow up, we have more of the setters and lead managers take care of that. The
Got it.
Mhm.
I mean, acquisition managers are hunters. Can they do it? Yes. Can they do it at a sustainable for a sustainable time frame? It's gonna get kind of hard, right? It's like, um, this is gonna sound terrible, right? There was that bit some time ago. Do you remember like that nerdy guy talking about like hot girls and what was it? It was hot and not crazy, or something along those lines, right? But like like to get like a killer salesperson who's great in processes and procedures, like that's a unicorn. That is
Yeah.
not that is not an ordinary human being. And by the way, that person that's a unicorn probably might get poached by someone else at a large company.
Mhm.
All right, you got to create like an incredible moat to make sure that person doesn't get poached.
Right. Or they're probably going to start their own company.
Yeah, exactly.
So when you're hiring, like now you could hire a manager that you need a manager, right? But in the
Hmm.
beginning, when you're hiring your salespeople, do you know that because salespeople, I mean, act managers usually are training the salespeople, right? Or they're also going over some of the KPIs and things. So, like, do you hire your acquisitions people with the intention to move them up to acquisitions manager, or is that like a different type of hire?
Everyone has that opportunity. Everyone has that opportunity. However, most people should not take advantage of that opportunity, right? Because most people want that because they want the promotion, they want to feel good.
Right.
But this conversation actually came up a couple of weeks ago, right? Like, would we ever, during Tom Brady's prime time, his prime years, would you ever take him off the field and put him in quarterbacks coach?
No shot.
No, no, you keep him on the field, right? And so, so many people promote their sales guys, and usually because the sales guys want the promotion.
Right.
But the reality is, if you promote your sales guys to be in sales management role, then you're taking your best guy off the field and putting him in a place where he's incompetent. And now you have incompetent sales management and you've lost sales. So
Hmm.
everyone has that opportunity. Odds are the guys that we're going to promote are not going to be our best closers. It's going to be one of our probably average salespeople.
So is all your salespeople are like one call closer type of role, and they have some.
Generally, no. I mean, it depends. Like, if we're saying one call close for them, yes. But in our organization, it's usually two calls, right? Someone has to set up the appointment, the other person closes it.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So for them, it's one call,
Right. And there are
but
lots of preparation work.
someone else, yeah, because you have inside sales and outside sales. So our closers are our outside sales. These are people that have been warmed up by someone
Mhm.
else.
Hmm.
Right.
That
John, I
makes
also
sense.
wanna, if you can ask like different, like the flow of a lead within the organization. What's the first stop? What's the second one? And for the hiring for each role, what are some different qualities to look out for? Which one can be outsourced overseas, like a VA? Which one needs to be American?
Hmm.
John, if you can
Yeah.
ask a question, things that.
Yeah.
Go
We'll
ahead.
talk on that, and then I wanted to hit on, based on all the salespeople you've noticed, do you notice people care more about a commission only structure or a base plus commission structure? So we'll get
In
into.
our industry, mostly commission only.
Mhm.
Like if you're in other industries, like pharmaceutical, medical, tech sales, like there's usually a pretty high base. But in our world, it's pretty much commission only or very low base, maybe $2,000 a month, right?
Got it. Yeah.
Because we're very much a eat what you kill business.
Hmm.
We don't, and overhead can kill you, right? We all saw it a couple of years ago, like how badly did a lot of people get hurt. Scale was the buzzword from like 2018 to 2022. But then after the rate hike in June of 22, scale is not really a word anymore, right? And so base is not the way to go. It's in our industry, it's really predominantly commission only.
Commission only. Got
Mhm.
it. So now you said you have your closers and your setters. So take us
Hmm.
through a lead from when it comes from the list and until it gets to your CRM, until it gets to basically the closing stage.
So if you're talking about the list, then there's usually you're talking about like cold calling and texting, right? And so if we're talking about cold calling and texting, I look at that as something completely different than a part of the traditional sales process. So I guess what I mean by
Hmm.
that is cold calling and texting. For me, I look at like mailing or PPC or TV because like what a lot of people get mixed up is they treat cold calling as like a lead manager role, but it's not, right? The cold call, because like the complaint we see all the time is like my cold callers suck. It's like no, your cold callers don't suck. Your cold callers have only one job, and it's to get people to raise their hands. Like you don't tell the direct mail company that the direct mail company sucks because too many leads are listed. No, like anyone that calls is a hot lead. But for whatever reason, with cold callers, we have these higher expectations of them. People were paying $4 to $6 an hour. We have these expectations of them. Like, no, cold caller's job is one job and one job only is to get a prospect to raise their hand. Then the lead manager gets involved. And now they get to treat that lead the way you treat like any other inbound lead. Right? It's not as high as an inbound lead, but it's good enough for a lead manager to work.
Right.
So we're talking about a list. I want to be very careful for everyone that's listening. Do not expect that the cold callers or the texters to be these phenomenal salespeople. Like, you're gonna pay them like phenomenal salespeople, 10% commission. Then yes, you can have high expectations. You're paying $4 to $6 an hour. Like, they're not going to be as great as you want. It's just unrealistic.
I'm glad you said that because that is something that we just started building our direct to seller side of the business.
Hmm.
And that's something that we realized. We're like, hey, the cold callers, they're just getting somebody to say, yes, I'm interested. And then we pass that on, get them out
Yeah.
of the recycling of the list.
Right. Exactly.
So now you have your cold callers and your SMS, right? Then
Hmm.
you have your lead manager, and then you have your basically your closer, correct?
Right. Acquisition
So
manager. Sure. Yeah.
acquisition manager. So would you say that the cold callers and SMS are your only VAs, or can the leads manager be a VA as well?
I would prefer not to have the lead manager be a VA. That's my preference. And particularly if you're spending money on marketing, whether it's TV, PPC, direct mail, or whatever, because that's the first touch of a homeowner, right? And like you spend this money to get people to reach out to you. Do you want the very first touch to be a person whose English is not perfect? Now, I know there's some VAs that are great, right, with their tone and so on, and maybe I'll be convinced otherwise sometime in the future. But for now, if you think about it, right, like let's just say you go to I'm trying to think of a nice you go to a nice hotel. Um, I don't know. Around here, we got the W, we got the Phoenician, whatever. You want to be greeted by someone that's like super friendly, nice, and very, very presentable. You want that to be the first face, right? Like, if you could imagine going to Nordstrom's and being treated and being greeted by a Walmart greeter. See, Helena doesn't like that. Like, how would that experience be,
Uh-huh.
right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it that's your very first touch for your company. So just be aware, like the house buying industry has been normalized tremendously in the last 4 years. but it's still not a normal industry. And
Hmm.
so there's elements like, is this a scam?
Right.
There's a lot of skepticism. And especially today, we live in a post truth, post trust society. We don't trust anybody anymore. And so if that's the case, and your first touch into your organization is a person whose English isn't spot on, now we got like more reasons for skepticism versus like, oh, I can trust this person now.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Especially with all the scams going on nowadays, text
Mhm.
messaging, calling is just it's nonstop. So that
Yeah,
makes sense. It's your company's first impression. Do you want to set a right first impression?
exactly.
So as you're hiring your, I guess, acquisitions managers, and your leads managers, right? What are, I know you said empathy and assertiveness is two of the big qualities. Are there any
Mhm.
other qualities you look for, or any different qualities between the act manager and the leads manager?
Yeah, so the lead manager, I want someone to be super friendly. I want someone that is easy to build rapport. I want to say Jamil, I put in this category, right? And lead manager and dispo manager, I think they're pretty similar profiles. So I want someone that's easy, can become your friend very easily, right? These are high I personality types.
Mm-hmm.
Um, that's what I want in the lead manager role, and then also a higher S because they're gonna be more service oriented. They're okay sitting behind a computer, hitting the phones 8 hours a day, doing follow ups, scheduling appointments. That's what I want for the lead manager role. But for the acquisition manager, I'm looking for the ability to build a quick connection is not nearly as important to me. It's a bonus, but it's not nearly as important to me. I want someone that's a professional, can come across again as firm. And it's not like this foreign concept. If you actually look at the realtor industry, the listing agent and the acquisition manager is the same person. The buyer's agent and the dispo manager, it's the same person, right? If you just think about like all the successful listing agents, they're the same. They're not warm and fuzzy people, right?
Mhm.
They're pretty direct and to the point.
Mm-hmm.
That's our acquisition manager. Versus like the lead manager and dispo manager, they're having a fun time. Look at this house. This house is amazing. Can you imagine the parties you're going to throw here? Right? They're more social and friendly. So
Right.
I hope that can kind of like draw the delineation, the distinction, and you just think about all your friends that are realtors. You can kind of see this from your realtor friends.
Yeah. No, that
If you
that
guys have
definitely.
realtor friends, I don't know. The wholesale world's funny.
We only make money with them. We don't make friends with them.
Yeah.
Just kidding. That's really interesting because John, because I'm doing all the disposition for the company. So like, although I want to be more participated in the active side, in the sales side, I don't have time. So John is like running all the sales training every day, working on KPI with them. But John is like more warm and fuzzy in general, and I'm very direct. But I'm the person selling deals on the dispo side, and he's on the
Hmm.
acquisition side.
Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying you can't be a dominant profile, right? There's benefits there as well. Because the biggest thing with Dispo, the greatest challenge we see in Dispo, because I do Dispo training as well. The greatest challenge I see on the Dispo side is assertiveness, where they're very understanding of the end buyer's perspective, right? They're easily sold on the end buyer's story. The benefit to being a dominant personality in the dispo role is that you are willing to impose your version of the story over theirs.
Right.
When they tell you, well, Helena, I can't pay that because of A, B, and C, you're going to think, well, I appreciate that, but did you also see these other comps over here? Right.
Hmm.
Whereas a dispo person that doesn't have a competitive personality might be like, oh, yeah, I get it. Right. And they want the default to the friend mode and then
Yeah,
they give
for
them a number.
sure.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because I mean, Helena's definitely very good at convincing buyers to otherwise to paint the picture that she wants them to see. You know,
Exactly.
I would say as far as like in our like partnership, I'm more of the agreeable social one, and Helena's more of the assertive closer, right?
Hmm.
So and we've realized that, and we use that strength to, um, really build the company and also any other avenues that we plan on going down.
Yeah, well, that's the best thing about real estate is there's no one size fits all. I mean, think about it,
Yeah.
right? Like, you guys have been part of Astro, you guys might be part of Sub Two, right? You guys might be part of TTP. Three totally different personalities, and then you add me to the mix. I'm totally different than those three, right? And so you can build a business entirely catered around your personality. There's no
Yeah,
rules for the business owner. You can do
Mhm.
the business however you want that best suits you, and then you hire people to fulfill the business that also are suitable to your personality.
I love that.
That's so
So I
good.
want to ask one last question on sales before we get into the business side of things.
Yeah.
So a lot of the now in wholesaling, you have people going direct to agent and you have people going direct to seller.
Hmm.
I personally have been thinking about this, right? And I think that on the direct to seller side of things, it's more sales and marketing. So you could be a really good salesperson no matter which industry you're in, and you could do really well. I think on
Right.
the direct to agent side of thing, yes, it is sales and marketing, but I think it's more so like you need to have some level of sophistication and understand real estate more. So it's
Hmm.
harder for a closer from an industry, right, to do really well on the direct to agent side of things than direct to seller. Do you notice that, and do you see there's different qualities that would make somebody better on each side?
Um, there are different qualities, but the real estate side is not so sophisticated that they can't be learned, right? I think
Right.
after a month or two of understanding the real estate lingo, they could learn it. Right.
Hmm.
And this kind of goes with what I was saying a moment ago, earlier in the show was like, I think sales is sales, picking up the lingo here and there, but for the most part, it's pretty much the same, right? So does it require more sophistication going against a realtor? 100%. But I don't think it's going to require like, more than a year experience. And you could probably get pretty far with limited experience. I mean, as a matter of fact, if you look at, I started my journey as a realtor, right? In my early part of my career, I never had any challenges for not knowing enough because all people wanted was to know that you cared and that you can get the job done. Everything else, they're okay with you getting answers from somewhere else. And so, if you're dealing with a realtor who's incredibly difficult, right, and they're bulldozing, they're having fun bulldozing you, that's fine. It's like, hey, you know what? I don't have the answers to your questions. Let me get those answers. I'll call you back. No one's gonna be offended with that. Most people, almost all people, are way more offended by you trying to BS your way through. Right? If you try to BS your way through and you get caught, now you've lost trust. But if you come across like, hey, John, look, I appreciate those questions. I don't have the answers to those questions, but let me do this. Let me call my boss and I'll call you right back. No one's gonna, not no one. There are jerks out there, but for the most part, they're gonna say like they're gonna appreciate that.
Hmm.
That makes sense. So just if you don't know, just say I don't know.
Yeah, no one's gonna hate you for not knowing.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you bullshit them and are you thinking I'm a dumb or something?
Yeah.
They'll
Yeah,
probably, yeah,
Thinking
bullshit
about
you
how
around
stupid do
with.
you think I am?
Yeah.
exactly. Now you've lost trust. Now you lost rapport, and it's gonna be
And
pretty hard to get that back.
everything's
Hmm.
gone.
Cool.
Yep.
So now let's talk about the business. So for your sales training program, can you
Hmm.
give us like a non-feed overall view? What is the program about and what's the business model? Like how do you generate revenue profit?
Yeah. So the business we work our bread and butter are business owners who have salespeople because we're all familiar with the expression work on your business versus working in your business. So we sit in the position of training their salespeople so that they can work on other things, and it's good for both parties because I have been incredibly blessed. I get to work with the best house buyers in the country, right? I have 35 or so of the top house buyers in the country as clients. And as a result, when we have our weekly training calls, we know what's being said in the living rooms, right? We have a collective genius, no pun intended, but like we have an intelligence, we have a collective intelligence of what's going on in the living rooms across the country, right? I hear on a lead manager calls very quickly because we do those calls twice a month. We hear very quickly how the attitude of the homeowners have changed across the country. We can see it, how it changes on the East Coast, how it changes on the West Coast, right? And so we can modify as like, hey, look, we're running into like I can't remember when this was, maybe sometime in 22. Like we could see very quickly, like, hey, a lot more of the homes are listed now than they were before. Now we got to work on the objection, how to deal, or not necessarily objection, but how do we deal with the fact that the home's listed, right? And then on the dispo side, we didn't have a dispo training prior to 22 because it was unnecessary. You could sell the property to anybody, right? Buy it, don't buy it, I don't care. But after that, now it's like, how do you have a conversation with a buyer to get them to come up on price? How do we deal with the objections, right? And so those are the things that change with the environment. And so we have 3, 4 calls a week. We're talking about how to deal with the challenges, whether on the acquisition side, lead manager side, dispo manager side, how to deal with the current environment. And so that's what we do to work with business owners so that they can work on their business. And as far as the business model, how do we find them? Our best way of finding them is just hanging out with other business owners. Like I want to say there's this brilliant strategy, right? But you just go hang out where they are. The expression, they says you want to find a good girl, like go to a church, right? Like
Yeah.
if you want to get business from business owners, join the masterminds, join the networking events, talk to the vendors, right? So
Mm-hmm.
that's where we're getting our business today.
Got it. And the revenue, the top line is the monthly subscription model. That's the business revenue model.
A good healthy chunk of it is. There's parts of it that's not, but a good healthy chunk of it is. Like we do um, consultations here and there. We have live events, so there are pieces of it that aren't recurring, but a good healthy percentage of it is recurring.
Got it. So two part, one is recurrent subscription model, another is high ticket sales for one-off event.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Got it. Okay. And so different aspect of the business, you mentioned the marketing and sales. So sounds like you don't have too much paid or outbound marketing. It's more so inbound marketing, referral, networking, right?
Today, almost all of our revenue is coming from networking and
Got
referrals,
it.
but we
Mm-hmm.
were actively working to grow the paid ads side. So I joined a mastermind about 6 months ago
Mm-hmm.
that's very marketing heavy. And I tried to figure it out on my own. I got as far as I could on my own, but eventually I got overwhelmed. So we hired someone else to take over the marketing.
Yeah.
But yeah, the if I want to hit my goals, I need to add the marketing. If I was satisfied with where I'm at, I don't need to spend any money on marketing.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm not satisfied with my goals. I want to build a company I can exit. So we're figuring out marketing.
So, okay, so at least for now, you have a very low burn ratio in terms of the expense ratio because you essentially have very little marketing expenses. I guess very little overheads because it's like a service industry, doesn't have too much.
I would not say little overhead because we have a media team.
Okay, and they're
We
all
have
base payment.
Yeah, everyone has base salary. So we have a
Okay.
media team. We got my assistant executive. I mean, she's my right hand person to everything. We have a sales manager. We have another coach in our organization, and we got VAs. So yeah, I wouldn't say that we have low overhead because it costs to. Again, if I was satisfied with where I was at, I could get my overhead pretty low, right? I could just
Mm-hmm.
stop podcasting, right? I can get out of this lease that I'm paying $6,000 a month, right? I could do all those things,
Mm-hmm.
but not satisfied with where I'm at. I'm trying to go over here. So our expenses, it's like when you're growing a company, the keeping expenses low and a growing company don't go hand in hand,
Mm-hmm.
right? Either you have a growing company with less margin, or you have a boring company that's super profitable, which is also a desirable goal. It's just not today. If I wanted to, I could just do nothing else and run a boring company, make 500-600K a year. I could do that. It's not what
Got
I
it.
want.
Because for the spending, I'm kind of like looking at it from the two different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
One is the expense, another one is investment. Expense is
Mm-hmm.
what makes the current company keep operating, like the
Sure.
normal functionality of the business. The
Mm-hmm.
investment side is to invest to produce the future revenue, although you don't see
Sure.
the immediate return. So let's say if
Mm-hmm.
you're doing podcasts or whatever, the goal is to generate prospects in the future.
Mm-hmm.
I would
Correct.
allocate some of them into investment as a current expense ratio.
Yeah, I mean, it's an investment, but it doesn't feel like an investment when it leaves the bank account, right? Because I
Yeah.
understand the value of like, is this an investment or is this an expense? Like, I totally get that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like coaching, masterminds, like these are all investments versus expenses. But at the end of the day, it's a fixed expense and it's an obligation, right? I die in a car accident tomorrow. That's still coming out of the credit card. Like that's still coming out of the bank account, right? Like
Yeah.
it's a figure that needs to be accounted for every single month. Now look, I don't know if I've broken seven figures in coaching yet, but I've spent a lot of money in coaching. So I am all for accounting things towards investments,
Mm-hmm.
but they still leave the bank account the same.
Yeah, because if your end goal is, let's say, to sell to a private equity or
Mm-hmm.
IPO or whatever, you want to sell it, they want to see all your financial statement in the past. So I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if that's something, can or cannot be done, but if you count it as like investment and amortized throughout the
No,
period
they don't
of,
care.
they don't care. They still
They don't
count it as
care.
a cash flow basis.
No, they care about one of two things. They either care about the top line revenue or they care about the EBITDA, right? Those are the
Mm-hmm.
only two things they care about. And from that, they give you a multiplier.
Got it.
Yeah,
Okay.
and for things to be classified as an investment for tax perspective, there's certain guidelines. So not everything that you would think like would be an investment, like money into my podcast is an investment. No, that's an expense.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And also sounds like your business more like B2B because your client are other business owner as opposed to like B2.
Yeah, that's who we are today, right? And uh, it's uh, it's again going back to building a business that you can sell. It was not an easy decision to stop buying houses,
Mm-hmm.
but the B2C business, not to say that it couldn't be sold, but there are not a lot of great comps for wholesaling companies that have exited. There are stories of good offers, there are
Mm-hmm.
stories of declined offers, but who can we point our finger to and say that person built a wholesaling company that they could sell?
Mm. I guess my question is B2B in terms of your client or other business owner. That's who you are
Yes,
selling.
absolutely. I'm running a B2B
Right.
operation,
And I
right?
think I really like that because you essentially do one sale. And as they grow bigger and bigger, your like lifetime customer value automatically go up. If you charge
Yeah.
them by the team size or the seat, whatever, if it's SaaS
Mhm.
company, they charge by seat. If it's a training, you can charge by different team size. So you do one
Sure.
effective sell initially, and if you pick the right customer who are essentially also your business partner at that point, the bigger they grow, the bigger the ticket you get from them.
So we don't charge by seat. We charge business owner. Is it something we could do? Perhaps, right? But the way I look at it is, I want to build a business that you'll stay with me for a long time. Um,
Mhm.
like you look at Netflix, you look at cable, you look at Spotify. Um, Cable's higher, right? But you look like YouTube TV. Like these are fees that aren't terrible that you'll never want to cancel,
And
right?
most people
Mhm.
forget they even pay them.
Right, exactly. Or gym membership, right? Like that's the area I want to be in, right? It's hefty, right?
Okay, that is your position.
1,250 a month. It's hefty, but like your sales guys are crushing it, so you're like whatever. But if I put myself in a position where I'm like 2,000, 2,500 a month, now I was like, all right, what's the ROI here? Should I continue doing this? Right? Like there's a lot of people that say raise your price, raise your price, raise your price, right? Which, sounds great in theory, However, when things are hard, where do you cut? You don't cut the $6 a month guy. You don't cut the
Mhm.
$15 a month. Like, see what I pay for DoorDash, like $8 a month, right, or $7 a month for the Express. Like, I'm not starting there, right?
Right.
I'm starting at the landscaping service for $200 a month. I'm
Mm.
starting at like, should I downsize my car?
Mhm.
Uh, should we compare how much we're paying for homeowner insurance? That's where I'm starting if I'm cutting expenses as a private person. And so we're pricing ourselves the same, right? Like you look at, I got to join this membership for 2,000, or this mastermind 2,000 a month, this mastermind for 2,500 a month. Got this expense that's 3,000 a month. Plus I got to travel 4 times a year. I got Steve over here for $1,000 a month.
Bye bye,
Let's
Steve.
cut those other guys first and
Oh,
cut
yeah,
Steve last.
right, for sure. That's very interesting. Okay, so now I want to better understand your value proposition. You are not like, a higher ticket, more customized sales training program. You are more like the commodity that is good to have and is always
Mm,
kind of fall back on if they do need help, but it's also not hurting a lot on their balance sheet.
Stable
And
and
exactly. And the
reliable.
great things, yeah, and the great thing is, most businesses have a salesperson retention problem. So like,
mhm.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
so they're always hiring a new salesperson. So then like, hey, like stick them into Steve's program. So I didn't know that when I got into it, but like while I got into it, I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. Like
Yeah, for
they
sure.
always need me because they're always getting new salespeople.
Yeah, either they are growing, which means they need more salespeople, or it's higher churn, they need to constantly hire. And the nature of the salespeople is they are kind of like looking for different things at the different time. They tend to, switch jobs pretty frequently. So either they have an in-house team or in-house person constantly training, which is not the best use of that person's time to make more money from clients, or they can just plug that person in, new salesperson into your training program, getting trained up without any additional cost, and it's a very affordable monthly expense.
Exactly.
It's very economic resilient as well. So I like that
Yeah.
model very safe.
Yeah. And we started that from day one. Cause again, like I'm not here to make a quick buck. I'm not here to be transactional. I'm
Mm-hmm.
here to stick around and do really well and over time increase market share. Because look, there have been a lot of sales trainers that have come and gone, right? There are a lot.
Mm,
Just like there are a lot of wholesalers that come and gone. There are guys getting into the sales space, right? Are they still doing well? I don't know. But
Yeah.
from what I've observed, and I could just be, maybe just kind of like was it tunnel vision?
Hmm.
But from what I hear from other people, like we're still the one that's top of mind, and we're still the best. So
And I would say a lot
our
of
model
that
works.
really, the credit goes to your video, like your marketing, your Instagram. Every time I open up my Instagram, your video is
Mhm.
always popping up. People just
Yep.
remember your voice, right? You are like equivalent to the sales master, which is Steve Trang. Um, okay, so that's really cool. In terms of like you mentioned you want to achieve 1 million revenue or whatever, 100 million value when you sell it. Roughly, how many customers do you need to have to achieve that goal?
That's a fantastic question, and a more mature version of myself would have a direct answer to that question.
Got it. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I would say right now, like if we're looking at um, to get to uh, 1 million a month, right? What's 1 million divided by? Let's say 1 million divided by 1250. I don't know what that number is.
1 million,
800.
2500, 800,
twelve,
right?
50,
Can I
I
get
800.
to
use a
800?
calculator. I didn't do that in my head.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
So,
800.
and that's gross. That's not net, right? But it's a super profitable
Right.
business at scale. So, so let's say 1,000, right? Can I get to 1,000 clients?
That sounds
I think
super
so,
doable. Yeah.
I
right?
died 100%.
What
Yeah.
is
See,
your expense ratio if you have an idea?
like I said, we're in a scaling mode, so it is not something to brag about, right? It's pretty
Yeah, for
sad,
sure. Uh-huh.
right?
Got it. Okay.
But our vision as we're executing is going to be 40%. And the reason why I say 40%
Mhm.
is not that like, oh, the margins are fantastic. Is that as I've matured as a business owner, 40% is about the number where you never have to worry pretty much ever again, right? Like
Mhm.
if you have another rate hike, because like we went from 55 clients, right, recurring in beginning of 22 to
Mhm.
about 20 something in I want to say end of 23,
Mhm.
right? So that's more than half. So the problem isn't the loss in revenue, is that we had all these expenses that were fixed. And so now moving forward, I want to keep my margins at 40%, and we're going to lead with revenue, which is something I've never done my whole life, right? But we're going to lead with revenue. We're going to make sure we have margins because we don't want to put ourselves in a position again. Because like I've been honest this whole time, right? You guys might have heard it if you guys were paying attention on Pardon Disruption or whatever. I think I was probably the most honest in saying like business sucks right now. We're having a hard time. And look, what was the reward for honesty? More lost clients, right? A lot of people would go over here to this other guru who is saying things are awesome,
Yep.
right?
Mhm.
People don't want to go with the honest guy. They want to go that will lie to your face. So I lost a lot. I lost additional business during that time,
Mhm.
which is fine, right? Because I slept good because I'm honest.
Mhm.
So for me, myself moving forward, our stated target is going to be 40%, and we're not going to deviate from that
Mhm.
because we experience what happens when you do.
Yeah. And in
Focus.
terms of the customers, there's also two aspects. One is the customer inception, another is retention. So if you have a super high inception, constantly having new customers coming in, but
Mm,
also having a high churn ratio, you essentially end up with similar number of
mhm.
customers. But
Yeah.
the customer acquisition cost is way higher than retention, which means you are spending more money with the same number of customers, same amount of revenue.
Mhm.
Conversely, if you are a very stable business, maybe you don't have too much inception, gradual single digit growth year over year, but you have a super high churn ratio, you are essentially a lot lower expense with a higher profit net to net coming out on the
Mhm.
other side. So that's like two different aspects.
Yeah, so we don't really have so much issues anymore with retention. I wouldn't say we don't have any issues, but we have fewer issues because for us, because we have a quality product and like it's a massive ROI. Like there's no one that goes through our product and it's like, oh, this stuff sucks. Like everyone that goes through it loves it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so as a result, the only time we lose clients is when their business falls apart. And
Mm.
so whether it's from you know leadership or a market change, right? Like that's when we lose clients. We don't lose clients like, hey, Steve, we found something better. We never hear that. What we
Mm.
hear is like, hey, we're cutting back on expenses,
Mm-hmm.
right? So retention for me, and by the way, because we're getting that response, I've added quarterly one-on-ones, which I don't do one-on-ones. I take that back. We started doing a couple of one-on-ones, but for the most part, we don't like to do one-on-ones. But I've started doing quarterly one-on-ones with my clients just to get a pulse on their business and see how I can be a better partner in their business. Because
Mm-hmm.
what was happening is if they were canceling because their business went down. So as a responsible business owner, now I'm talking to them like, hey, what's going on with business? How can I help you stay successful? And as long as you're staying successful, you're never going to leave my service.
And then
Right.
they'll and then people seeing them being successful, knowing, oh, what do you? Oh, I'm using Steve's training, Steve's
Yeah.
Exactly.
Salesforce. That's just gonna be more of a way to market the business, your business. It's
Exactly right.
recession proof.
For sure. So, Steve, you
We
also
learned.
mentioned that. So, yes, there are so many different training programs, like so many. I personally also heard about like Jeremy Miner and all that.
Hmm.
So it's like there's so many wholesale companies, right? How do me and John, as Easy Res founder, we differentiate our wholesale company compared to like New Western, Kickly, whatever? So
Hmm.
similar question for you is, what is the your sales program kind of like different from others, and what are your program catering for what kind of audience group?
I mean, I think a lot of the other programs are actually great, right? Like obviously their clients are having results. I think the biggest thing for us is that we're really focused on the person we're talking to, but
Mm-hmm.
also making sure that we're modifying adjusting for our behaviors. Because if you look at like Jeremy Miner, it's great. His lines are fantastic, right? Some of the challenges you have, though, from what we've heard from some of his clients, is that you have to memorize all his lines. And so if you get hit with something, sales is not smooth. So you get hit with something you're not prepared for and you don't have that line memorized. Now what do you do? Right. The other thing too is Jeremy is incredibly charismatic. Like I've seen him speak from stage in in person. He was generous enough to take me out to breakfast about a year ago. The guy's charismatic. If you're
Mm-hmm.
charismatic, you can get away with talking a lot, right? But if you're not charismatic, some of his lines don't quite land the same way. So
Mhm.
Jeremy is an incredible salesperson. Obviously, the results show it. I would just make the suggestion that it's not for everybody. And so for us, our philosophy is not about how can you be this great salesperson, is how can you connect with this other person and help them buy what they said that they wanted, and how can you modify your behavior to make sure that you're mirroring exactly what they require so they feel comfortable buying from you.
Let me ask you: do you use predictive index for your clients too to kind of see the profiles of who you're dealing with?
For the B2B clients, yes. I mean, obviously not with a homeowner, but for B2B,
Right,
yeah,
right.
part of our onboarding process is everyone takes the PI.
Yeah, that makes sense. You can really tailor the sales process towards each individual profile.
Exactly.
Very
Cool.
interesting.
So I would say like your vision, right? From here, what is your, if you have that plan lay out, like the timeline and different milestone from here to where you want to exit, what does the future looks like for you?
Just do one thing and one thing only, right? Keep the main thing the main thing. Avoid distractions. We're even getting more focused today than we were even a couple of months ago. And so just keep going, keep your head down, and execute. Like we used to think, like I've got this idea for an invention, don't steal it, right? But the reality is, it's not who has the best ideas, it's who's the best at executing ideas,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
right? So, like, in your market, people go to you, they go to Helena. Why? Because Helena can do it, right? But you're not the only person that's doing co-wholesaling in your market,
Mm-hmm.
Definitely
right?
not in Florida.
Right. So it's not what you do; it's who can do it the best. And so for us, it's just execute.
Mm-hmm. I love it. Cool. So we're coming to the end of the podcast. There are three questions we ask all of our podcast guests. I'll fire them, me and John fire them through really quickly. So the first
Sure.
one is, what do you do consistently on a daily basis or regular basis to take care of your mindset? Because we all know mindset is really important for successful entrepreneurship.
So
I
it's
know
gonna
you
sound
have
terrible, but I
like
don't do anything about that.
really.
I don't. I
I
mean,
guess we'll talk about it about your morning routine or something.
no. So I have been, for better or for worse, you know, blessing and a curse, always been irrationally confident and think I'm going to conquer everything. So like,
Mm,
I don't have any mindset challenges because I believe I deserve success and I'm going to do everything I can to get it, and nothing can stop me.
yes.
You
So
think was that? Did you have to develop that, or you just for as long as you can remember, you've always been like that?
I distinctly remember my mom when I was a kid being apologizing because I'm still a terrible singer. I remember singing when I was a kid. She's like, I was like, I'm sorry, mom. You have to listen to me singing, but I love singing, right? And she's saying specifically to me, like, you can do anything you want so long as you believe you can do it and you're willing to put in the work. I have this distinct memory when I was a kid, and I believe that was programmed so hard into my subconscious that
That's so
it's
good.
carried me through to this day.
I love that. It's like the
Kudos to your
opposite
mom.
usually of what
Yeah.
people are taught when they're growing up.
Seriously, right?
That's amazing, though.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so the next thing is, what do you consistently do each day to kind of stay on top of like your knowledge and learning and ahead of the industry?
So I still have coaching. I'm still getting coached. Actually, I was kind of embarrassed 2 weeks ago. John Maxwell was on stage, right, at the
Mm-hmm.
Family Mastermind. I'm listening to them speak. And I told myself a few years ago, I don't need to listen to him anymore. Like, all his books sound the same, right? Because I picked up 21 Laws of Leadership, or 21 Interview Laws, one of them, right? I think it's 21 Laws of Leadership. Good Leaders Ask Great Questions. And there was a third book that I read, right? And I picked up the fourth book. I didn't finish. I was like, man, all his books sound the same, right? I'm done with John Maxwell. Not to say I don't believe in him anymore. It's like, I think I've gotten everything I can from John Maxwell, right? Foolishness. And I see him speak on stage. I was like, God, everything he said today was new. Like, I've
Really? Oh my
missed it, right? And so, but for the most part, I am constantly learning. When you're in my car, I'm always listening to Audible, with the exception of the last 6 months. Like I said, I've got a coach now, and I've just been gobbling up all his material, trying to master everything I'm learning from him. So, but to get better, I'm constantly developing myself. Like, I have this irrational confidence, right? But at the same time, I'm never satisfied. I'm content, I'm grateful, but never satisfied.
Yeah, for sure. Same. The coach, are you talking about like the market and sales coach, or is it a different
Marketing
coach?
coach, yeah.
Got it. Is that like something like Alex Hormozy is doing, training people on this marketing and sales, similar to
It's
that?
not Alex Ramosi, but it's some guy, pretty low key. Not a lot of people know who he is.
Mm-hmm.
So I think but it's like 800 of us inside his mastermind.
Okay,
That's interesting.
got it. And the last question is for people, because our channel, the audience are the entrepreneurs who want to scale a business, not just do one wholesale deal here and there, not just build one house here and there. They actually want to produce a processing system with an exit goal in mind, either to sell it or IPO or whatever. So for entrepreneurs who want to build a business and scale it, what advice do you have for them?
Um, I'll give some advice that I haven't taken myself. It's find somebody who's done what you want to do, right? Find someone who's had the exact exit that you want to have, and then figure it out. So I've got my best friend. He sold his business for just shy of 9 figures. So he counsels me here and there. Um, I got a mentor who sold half of his company. He guides me here and there. So I guess I've kind of taken his advice, but I haven't taken it as well as I should.
Mhm.
But yeah, I would say find someone who's done exactly what you want to do and figure out how to get in their good graces and learn from them.
Mm, love
Love
it.
that.
Yeah, that's like something because me and John were getting into new development construction. So I'm spending a lot of time to network with builders, developers in the area, and basically uh, lean on those people while constantly thinking how we can bring them value. And that's how our wholesale company come into play because we can do the acquisition, we're resourceful, we help them solve problems, etc. So I totally agree with you. Like mock the people who you want to be in their shoes in the future, and for people who are giving you advice, but they're not living the life that you are striving for, like just
Mhm.
disregard their opinions.
Exactly right. Because like I was at an event recently and I heard a guy talking, right, giving a lot of advice. And if you had no experience, all his advice sounds really good, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I've been doing this for darn near 20 years. All his advice sound is extremely superficial, right? He
Yeah.
doesn't tell you about the experience of being in the weeds, all the bad stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas, I can tell you all the bad stuff, all the things you don't know are going to happen before it even happens, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so you want to find that guy for that very reason. But on the outside looking in, you can't possibly discern between the guy who's full of it and the guy
Mm-hmm.
that's doing it. So find the guy who's living life you want, and also make sure he's doing what he said he's doing.
Yeah, see their tracking record, like they actually did it. Now they say they did it, but without the evidence.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And the
Yeah.
more honest they are, I feel like the more they're actually doing.
Uh-huh.
That's right.
Cool.
Awesome. So
Awesome.
Steve, thank you for being on the podcast. We really appreciate it. Now, if anybody's interested in your sales program, how would they go ahead and find it?
The best way is just go to closemoresales.com. Closemoresales.com. Bought that
That's
domain, made it easy to remember. You want to close more
That's all.
sales.
Yeah. .com.
Yeah, and you can also
Dot
find
com.
Steve on Instagram. What's your IG, Steve?
Steve.Trang, STEVE.TRANG.
Okay, all right, guys. Especially
Amazing.
you're running a sales team or want to scale your business, definitely reach out to Steve through the website, through the Instagram. His team. We have been learning training from him. My team has been learning sales training from him. We all benefit tremendously. So definitely check it out.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Steve, for everything.
All right, thank
You're
you,
welcome. It's
Steve.
my
I'll
pleasure.
see everyone in the next episode. Bye.
Take care.
Bye.